Hey there. Do you ever wonder how the rich seemingly get richer year after year while you're still struggling? Or do you wonder, what are you going to leave behind for your kids? What kind of legacy will you leave for your heirs? What about you'd like to know more about financial freedom through passive and residual income? If any of these are topics you'd like to know more about, but you don't know where to start, let's get connected. I have a 10-part strategy to grow, protect, and transfer wealth that I call Pitranomics. I'm Juli Pitra. Join me in my Facebook group, and let's grow together. See you soon. Well, hello, everybody. It's Thursday and time for Pitranomics Thursday Talks, where I discuss Pitranomics, my 10-part strategy to grow, protect, and transfer wealth. And let me say, I probably am sweaty and all that because it has been a week, and today has been interesting. It started early. So we're going to talk about Pitranomics. Tonight's strategy we are going to discuss is basically investing. Send your dollars out into the world and have them come back with friends. So let me bring this forward. Here is the summary of Pitranomics. There's 10 strategies. And except for the first two, you can do them in any order you want. Don't really worry about which order we talk about them. But the one we're going to do right now is the send your dollars out. The first two strategies, the assessment and how to eat an elephant, you have to do those first because everything else depends on it. And the send your dollars out to have them come back with friends, well, that's going to help satisfy one of your end of life goals that we've discussed before. So anyway, I have my handy dandy, handy dandy iPad. We're playing with things. We're learning how to do this right. I've only been doing this live in public since the beginning of June. Still lots of technical difficulties, so bear with me. So today we're talking about, let's see, this one. Send your dollars out. So what does that mean? Well, first, that means you have to have some accumulation of dollars to send out because the dollars you invest can't be the dollars or pounds or Deutschmark, whatever, that you need to live on. This is surplus. Later on, we'll talk about budgeting, which is snack now, feast later. But right now, we're going to assume that you've accumulated some money so you understand what the goal is. Let's say one of your goals or part of one of your goals is to send your children to college. This is something that my husband and I shared, so I want to give a little bit about that. We started back when my oldest daughter, Jacqueline, was a toddler. We needed to plan how much we wanted to save for her school. So this is what we looked at. A state school in Texas for 4 years. And what did that cost right now? And then we applied an anticipated cost of, these costs inflate. I can't talk today. The inflation of school was much higher than standard inflation. So we had to both grow our money in terms of present value money and keep that pace with the inflation of rising school costs. So luckily, since we started early enough, we were able to save a little bit extra. Neither of our kids went to state schools, but I would consider that goal check as far as being accomplished because we had enough money to send the kids to school without them ending up being in debt at graduation. That's not a difficult goal for everybody if you start with plenty of time, and that's the big thing. This is why one of the cornerstones of Pitranomics is to determine life goals, and particularly Those goals, if you haven't accomplished by the end of your life, you will feel your life is without purpose. Back to the major goal of my husband and I to produce sane, productive members of society. Part of that was educated, sane, productive members of society. What they do with that education, they don't have to stick with the field. They just need the groundwork. And so that means a decent college. And that means a lot of money. Because here's the sad state of America, it's getting so expensive to educate your children. So you have to start that goal early or know that they're going to get scholarships or grants. But what we didn't want was to saddle our children with debt after graduation. So that's why it was a goal to give them some choices. So we started with 529 funds. And I don't even know if those are popular right now. Maybe some of you in that industry can speak to it. But basically, a certain amount of money every month invested somewhat aggressively so that we could counteract the rising costs and then have the money available by, say, age 18. So if we can move ahead to the page that has a beautiful graphic, I love this. You have to have a dollar. You have to send it out. That dollar has to go do some work. You're putting your money to work. And therefore, after the result of your money doing work, that money comes back to join you with friends. It's multiplied, and hopefully it's multiplied enough to meet your goals. So now, and my lovely daughter's on. Thank you for coming on. She has just graduated from college. She starts her new job next week. I'm very proud of her. My son will start his junior year this year. Couldn't be prouder. That goal was considered a check. So let's look at the next thing. Have a goal for what your dollars will accomplish. Don't make the dollars the goal. Make the dollars possible to enable the goal to be accomplished. I hope that's clear. I really don't believe in money for money's sake. Money is to enable you to accomplish something else it is that you want to do. So it's very important that you have a deadline for what you want to accomplish. Without a deadline, it becomes very difficult to know if you've stayed on track. And you also have to be able to understand if it's been successful. So I call that the check mark. If it's not something you can put on a list and check that you've accomplished it, how on earth do you know if you were successful? So I've met people whose goals, all right, this is falling. I want to have $1 million. Well, is that $1 million in the bank just sitting there doing nothing, depreciating as it sits? Is it $1 million worth of some asset that's producing income each year? What is that $1 million supposed to do? Or what is that 100,000 supposed to do? Or even what is that $100 supposed to do? What is the goal? Maybe you want to save up $10,000 to go on a really cool week's vacation. It's for something. Always know your why. Always know your when. Always know your what. How you know when it's been accomplished. And this is really, really important. When you talk about your why, I want you to think about if you hadn't accomplished it. How important is it? So now you know your fire, you know your motivation, you know what's making you accomplish it. So again, your time. This is actually this is a check mark, doesn't really look one. And I know my handwriting is horrible. I'm sorry. Know when, that's an N, accomplished. Know your motivation. And know what the, loss would be if you don't succeed. So the cost of not succeeding, we won't call it cost of failure. Call it your cost of not succeeding. So I want you to think about that because we're going to erase this and come up with another goal and kind of construct it. Okay, so if anybody doesn't have this, you know what I'll do? I'll just take a screenshot so I can share it later. because I'm going to erase all of this. Maybe. There we go. Is it erasing on your end? Great. Okay. So I will ask, does anyone have a goal that they'd like to share that we can deconstruct live? A life goal. Okay. I'm going to come up with another one then, and it's going to be about retirement. Now, when my husband and I started planning for these things for retirement, what did retirement look like? What did we want to do? Now, I know for sure now that my husband will probably never fully retire. He will always work. He will feel fulfilled by a purpose, something that he's stretching his mind. When we were planning, I was a housewife and I thought, one day we'll retire. But I know now that I also am equally engrossed in what I do. So I can't imagine just sitting around doing nothing. That doesn't mean I don't want the freedom to choose to do that. That's the difference. So, what would retirement look like for us? How did we talk about it when we were, 20 years ago? Well, the first thing we wanted to do was travel. Now, traveling costs money. Let's say you want to travel 6 months out of the year. Well, you're still got to take care of all the bills at home. Someone's got to take care of your house. We didn't have a dog then, so I wasn't thinking about that. You got to buy plane tickets and hotels and food. You have to have contingency plans. All of that costs money. In addition to all the other goals that we decided, we thought that if we made the equivalent, I believe it was 80,000 a year from 20 years ago, with a couple other things, no bills, house paid for, all of that, then this would be sufficient for us to live how we wanted. So we were laboring under this. It's also important to understand as you progress, you may realize that your bullseye was a little off, maybe too high or too low. We changed ours to 120 because one of the things we wanted to be able to do was to also travel with the family. Now, that's quite a bit of money. We weren't making that when we made these plans. So how are we thinking, okay, we're going to be able to retire making more money than we'd ever thought about when we made these plans? This is what you think about when you invest, because how aggressive your goals are will help fuel how risky you will invest or how much risk you will accept in your investments. So if you're like, no, all I need is 30,000 a year, and let's say you're making 60, you don't need much. So you're probably going to be extremely conservative. We spoke to many different investment advisors when we were thinking about how will we invest our money, and every single one tried to do a risk assessment profile of how aggressive they could be with your money on your behalf. Now, I will say this, most of the ones that we encountered weren't worth the trouble. But there's one that I'm very happy we got with, and he will appear sometime this summer on Pitranomics. So I'm excited about that. Don't have a deadline yet, but he has said he will come because his views on investing I think, are very novel, very, very useful. So anyway, what's the goal? Back to 120,000 a year. We thought that could cover all of our expenses and still provide some fun support for the kids. One of the things that existed for my husband and me back when our kids were little, our needs, our money spend was really, really tight. So we thought we can be equally as tight in retirement. And then that's when I started blowing this up. I was like, I don't want to be tight in retirement. I want to travel at a certain level. I don't want to have to worry about this. So then we became very aggressive. Now, back about 8 years ago, when I turned 50, I decided I don't want to be a housewife anymore. I want to do something else. And that's when I started real estate investing. Now, to some people, real estate investing seems extremely risky and speculative. And to others, real estate investing is the safest thing out there. It's all about how well you educate yourself on that topic or any topic. And let me just mention there's the stock market, there are the crypto markets, there's Forex exchange, there are annuities, there's insurance, there's there's a myriad of ways to invest your money as long as there's a process and a strategy you can employ. I don't believe in gambling. I'm not saying I judge it. I don't believe in it for me. I take calculated risks to accomplish anticipated returns. That is how I do it. Do I hit it every time? No, I don't. But I make sure I work hard enough to hit it most of the times. So that's what's important. Now, when it comes to saving for retirement, you can't just save. You can't depend on Social Security. You really can't even depend on your 401k unless you have the opportunity to be quite aggressive with your 401k. So, one thing I want you to think about for those of you that are W 2, speak to a professional about maybe gaining control of your retirement accounts and doing something different than what your administrator does. The earlier, the better. So, if you're 20, get started. If you're 40, have that conversation with your tax strategist and with your financial advisor if you have them, or if not, get one, consult with one, because you don't always have to leave it with the administrator. There are other options. They may cost, but look into them because now you have your nest egg. Now it's time to send it out and to have it come back with friends. Does anybody have any questions about what I just said? Okay, so I'm going to share something about investing. You need criteria. So you need to understand what are the principles by which you will determine you're on track. Is it return on investment? Is it return on equity? Is it cash on cash return? What is it? It could be anything. What is it that's getting you on your way? And those are the criteria you should use when deciding if a particular investment decision fits your purpose. So for me, on my side, now my husband handles the stocks and the insurance and all that. I understand it to a point, but I'm not as enamored of being involved with it as I am real estate. To me, it clicks for me. 20 years ago, I never would have thought this would be something I would love to do. And now I can't imagine anything else. So for me, what I'm looking at, okay, where did my pen go? I have a rough rule of thumb, and this is not working. Why isn't it working? Don't know. I'll just keep talking. I have a rough rule of thumb that my cash on cash return for any investment has to be at least 15%. It doesn't mean that it's going to be only 15%, but I know I'm not going to hit the mark every time. So if I shoot for 15%, then I am looking at something that's going to at least over the average or maybe the mean of my portfolio accomplish my goals. And I can't scribble. This is really concerning to me. Don't know why. I love to scribble. Anyway, I also had the desire to increase our net worth. So I have to look at when we talked about our resources available, some of them were financial. And basically, your net worth is the sum of the value of all your assets less the sum of the value of all your liabilities. And that is what you were worth. Essentially, if you liquidated all of your assets and cleared all of your liabilities, that would be what you have left. So that's essentially your net worth. Now, net worth doesn't take into account the net income on those assets. It's just valuations of where they are right now. But if increasing your net worth to a certain point is a target, then you need a way of understanding how to assess. So in real estate, as far as I'm concerned, it's very easy to understand the year over year change and whether or not you're heading in the right direction with improving your net worth. For my husband, it makes more sense to understand the value of the stock portfolio. To me, that's like magic money that could disappear in a minute. And I think for him, maybe real estate is part of the same thing. Not exactly. We both understand, but I'm more comfortable with the concepts of real estate. He's more comfortable with the concepts of not just stocks, but macroeconomics of the world. By the way, he is an economics major twice over. He understands that very well. But for me, I want to have an asset and I want to know that I can transfer that asset, the transfer of wealth, to my heirs. Now, hopefully, along with transferring the asset, we will transfer the knowledge and the desire to manage those assets going forward. So, knowledge has to be a part of what you leave behind in the transfer of wealth. So, think about that. Whatever it is you're growing so that you can transfer it, make sure the understanding how to keep it is also there. Because we've all heard about people who won the lottery and in 7 years they're broke and they've won millions and millions of dollars. Where did it go? They didn't know how to handle it. They don't understand that just because you have money doesn't mean you spend that money. You take that money that you have and you send it out into the world and it comes back with friends, and you take a few of those friends and you send them back out, and maybe you spend the ones that left. Or you send all of them back out, and on the second iteration when they come in, you save a little bit of that. Whatever your strategy is, focus on growth. You can't spend everything you make. And then focus on protecting it, because the ravages of taxes will diminish your wealth, and the ravages of, let's call them assailants, judgments, lawsuits, irresponsible decisions, those will decrease your wealth. And if you package it correctly in the right entities and you've protected it appropriately and you've grown it, then you leave behind a nest egg, not just for your next generation, but maybe for the next and next, and also for whatever philanthropies you'd like to support. So in our case, and I still can't write, for me, return, cash on cash return and increase of net worth, I can't write it. So sorry, we'll figure it out. Maybe it will come back to us. I don't know. But the important thing is to remember, whatever your investment strategy is, you need to understand when those dollars need to come back from working out into the world and growing, when they need to come back so you can accomplish your task. In the case of the graduation, or sorry, the college education, we needed that money to be available and safe by 2019 when my daughter started college. So all of that work started. It's like grow, 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 grow. And then I guess about age for her 16, we're like, more conservative, because the stock market has a lot of variability. And we're like, hey, we've hit a good target. Let's put it in something that's pretty stable, so it's there and available for her when she needs it to go to school. So you have to be strategic. Also, another Pitranomic strategy is to have the right professionals to help you. So even though I suffered a pretty catastrophic financial loss in 2018 and 19, that particular goal of being able to fund our kids' education was insulated from that catastrophic loss, and we were still able to send them. And that's another thing. When it comes to protection, sometimes you have to protect the activities to support this one goal from the activities to start another goal. It's where those professionals come in handy. I can't stress enough. Start with your insurance, go to your estate planner, go to any kind of legal attorney, depending on your business, your tax strategist. That is just to start. If you're going to do any investing like real estate, get a mentor, partner with someone, JV with someone, learn from those who've already made the mistakes. For example, in the case of real estate, I decided, hey, let's invest in a property in Paris, Texas, where up until that point that I heard about the property, I'd never been to the city. I knew, but I heard of the movie, didn't know where it was. Hopped in the car, drove, saw the property. The property is an apartment building. Had I ever been the lead on the apartment building before? No. I've invested passively. I understood it theoretically, but I'd never done an apartment. I've never worked in Paris, and I'd never done hard money. I obviously have some tolerance for risk. Other people might not have chosen such a risky first endeavor in Paris, in a city you don't know, with officials you don't know, with a financial vehicle you don't understand, and a type of asset you don't understand. But hey, that's kind of how I got started in real estate, was doing something I'd never done before, but I had help. I had mentors. I had people I could go to for advice. Some of the advice was good, some of it wasn't, but that's okay. I took a risk, it paid off. What do you do when a risk you take doesn't pay off? Does it mean you abandon the path? Well, then it's time to reevaluate. I almost didn't continue investing in real estate. My first project, the rehab was double what I was told to expect. And it included those items I didn't even think would be included in the scope of work that I had been given. So not only did it cost more for me to get into that project, but the valuation was less than I thought it would be. However, my rent that I received was higher than I had expected. And my tenants from that property that I bought 8, 9 years ago, whenever that was, they've been there until now and they moved out, I believe, yesterday. That asset has been amazing. I was advised at that point that real estate is forgiving in the long term. So, the type of investing I like to do, the type of real estate investing that makes sense to me, is the long term buy and hold. I have done some flipping, it's been okay. I was partnered with some people supposedly to flip houses for profit. I did not see profit, I saw only massive losses. They might think it's my fault, but I really don't. So I know that I've been a lot more successful without them. So I don't think it was all me. And that's how that goes. So don't give up if it's rough at first because you're learning. I know that 5 years from now, I will look at this apartment building and I will say, I have learned so much. Oh my gosh. I can't believe the mistakes I made. What was I thinking? Actually, I'm thinking that right now. I don't even have to wait 5 years to think, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? But I know I will be very pleased to have held that asset. And I will be very pleased with the lessons that I'm learning because that is what helps you expand. When it comes to taking your dollars out and sending them out in the world and having them come back with friends, sometimes you'll lose some. That is why you don't bet the money that you're living on for shelter, for food, for necessities. That's not what you bet. You grow your surplus and you bet that with educated risks involved in your decisions. I'm not talking about going to the ponies, although there are professional gamblers that know how to do that. I don't. Learn how to invest your money, invest in what you understand and have a passion about. That will keep you going when you stumble. So, before I go into any more details about real estate investing, which I'd like to explore a little more, do we have any questions? Does anyone like to either say something on the stage or ask about anything else? I love interaction, so please, somebody say something.
Hi, what were the peaks and valleys of owning the apartment building over how many years did you have that those tenants? And what were like the peaks and valleys? I'm just curious, and how long did you have it, or you still have it?
That first investment was a single family home in Grand Prairie,
Okay.
and the peaks and valleys. So I went through three different contractors in the course of one project.
Hmm.
Um, the first ones, funny enough, had been come to me highly recommended by a group, a real estate investment group that I had joined. And everybody was saying how wonderful they were. And because everybody was saying how wonderful they were, they grew way too fast. The demand was overwhelming for their services. And that general contractor hired a number of project managers, some of whom were good, some weren't. I got one. I'm not going to say whether he was good or not. He wasn't good with me. He was, compared to me, quite young, quite arrogant, and dismissive. And that doesn't really work well with me. Not now, not then. So one day I showed up because we had arranged a meeting and he was over an hour late. And when I mentioned, of course, sweetly and without rancor, "Why are you late?" He said to me, "Well, I have other things to do besides your project. You're not that important," that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, new project manager. In fact, new general contractor. So then I went with another one. Um, he didn't actually get to do any work. He managed to offend me on so many levels before he could even get any work done. So he was next. And then my first one that finished the project for me, it's finishing touches, but I can't come up with the name. Blake something. I can't believe I've forgotten his name. Got that project done, even though in this tiny little house, I didn't expect to replace the roof. I didn't expect to replace the foundation or fix the foundation by digging through the slab. I didn't even know that happened. I didn't expect to fix the plumbing. I didn't expect to put in French drains because the huge lot had a lot of drainage issues. And the demolition of this shed that I thought, oh, hey, we might be able to fix it. The demolition in itself was expensive. So the first hiccup was the work that needed to be done, I had no idea needed to be done. So that was my ignorance. How could I have overcome that? I believe that if you want to invest in real estate, you just have to give it a go. There's no way to avoid that. It was a huge, huge error, but it was made from a place of ignorance, not from a place of carelessness. So that's why I live okay with that. The next, I guess, stumbling block with that particular property, I did not understand at all how desirable it would be to have a really decent place in a somewhat depressed area. So I did, for, I guess, over rehab the property for the area, but it was really nice. I had a multitude of applicants, and that has stuck with me. Even people who can't pay a lot of money will pay for a decent place to live. So that's part of my strategy going forward. Make it decent. Not necessarily something I want to live in because I don't have the same choices that they do, but something that I can sleep at night knowing that I've placed someone. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but it does need to fit their needs and that they will consider it a blessing to have it. That's the strategy. Share real estate blessings, a decent place for them to live. Now, that particular property, not too many, after that first initial thing, not too much. But plenty later, there was a house I bought basically speculatively. I knew that it would not cash flow in the beginning, but it was in Plano. And I thought, oh, Plano's growing, it'll eventually be fine. And it is fine now, but it wasn't fine for 3 years. It did not cash flow for 3 years. It has appreciated in value. So I've gained a lot of equity from that property, but the increase in income for that increase in equity has not occurred. So for that one particular property, my return on equity is quite dismal. However, that is not one of the performance indicators that I view. Another big, I guess, valley was in 2000, late 2018, I believe it was, or 20. Late 2019, I found a house and I thought, let me try this Airbnb thing. So I renovated a house, and right as I was ready to say, okay, I want to do an Airbnb, COVID hit and made everything really uncertain. And I acted from a place of fear and sold it. Makes me sick every time I see the valuation of that property. I regret the properties I have sold more than any property that I've bought. Even the ones I sold at a fire sale as a result of my previous relationship or partnership, I was overwhelmed with how much money I was bleeding. I may not have been able to survive from a business perspective profitably if I had kept them. But when I see the missed opportunity, sometimes it makes me sick. So that's the big one. Whenever I've operated from a place of fear, that's when I've made those mistakes that I miss. long-winded answer to your question, but I hope it helps. Any other questions about investing that anyone would like to talk about before I move into, well, hold on. Can I write?
It was Blake Johnson with finishing touches.
Thank you, Blake Johnson with finishing touches. Thank you, Kathy. By the way, just so we know, Kathy Crow was the source of my first deal ever in real estate. And if you guys will just indulge me, I would like to introduce her as the goddess of real estate investing in Texas. She's an amazing source for real estate knowledge. She operates, you know what, Kathy, can you take a few minutes just to share a little bit about what you do and what you've done for real estate in the years?
Oh my goodness, I wasn't prepared.
I know, sorry, putting you on the spot, but
And I was your source of your apartments in Paris.
yes, and you were the source of my second deal.
Yes.
And you were the source of the property that caused me to become a real estate agent. So you've been
Yes.
extremely pivotal in my real estate career. So please say a
Great.
little
I'm
bit.
so happy. Well, I'm third generation realtor. I My grandfather was a developer in San Francisco in the Fisherman's Wharf area. My mother became an agent when I was a little girl, so I grew up in this business. Um, I was doing regular real estate, running up and down Preston Road, showing the all American dream to all the transferees coming into Dallas. I was young in my 20s. I've been doing this 46 years on my own with my license, and I'm 66, so I was 20. And I was had all these young couples and all these whiny women and all these husbands that were hitting on you and everything else like that, or hitting on my friends or whatever, because their wives were still back in New York or Chicago when they were moving down here. And I just hated it. I told Mom, God, I hate these people. They're all so picky, and they didn't like Texas, and they really thought on every corner there's a vacant lot. Where are the cows? And there's no cows on that vacant lot. They think everything, we were all just a bunch of hicks and cows and everything. So, and like the TV show Dallas. Well, I went to an FDIC auction when RTC was taking over banks, and I got into the investment world. I met some people there, and that's all she wrote. And I've been doing investing ever since, back in the early 90s, late 80s, and early 90s. And then after 9/11 happened, things started getting spooky, and I decided to start teaching investing. All these people got laid off at MCI, and they all had these self-directed IRAs. And some of the big companies here in Dallas were laid off, and somehow I knew people who knew people, and they said, Kathy, you're so good at talking. Why don't you teach some classes? And so I did. I rented the Richardson class, a room over at the Richardson Civic Center there at Arapahoe and 75. And I started teaching people how to invest in real estate, and I just wrote some stuff. And that evolved into me having a very large real estate investment club and a radio show on KRLD, a very large real estate investment club that I had for many years. And I sold it in 2008, right before the big bust. And I was on non-compete for a couple years. And then after that, I started back in and selling real estate again. And I teach, and I hold meetings, and I like to network, and I find real estate deals all over. Dallas in the past 2-3 years has gotten oversaturated, not only with local people, but with out of state people. And the prices have gotten to me out of hand. So I started venturing out to little places like Paris and Longview and Marshall and Tyler and Nacogdoches and all around. And I've made my own little niche by going elsewhere, Wichita Falls, all around. And that's what I did. And I analyzed deals very thoroughly and put together rehab budgets, and I do the whole thing to make sure it's a deal. and that's what I do.
You know what?
You know,
Thank you. Kathy, one question. What is that acronym that you use? Is it ABLE?
Yes, able. Are
Can
you
you?
available
Mhm.
to properties? Are you ready to be a buyer in your mind? Do you have your lending in place? How are you going to get, get your money to buy the deal? And E, are you educated?
Educated.
And I can help you with three of those. I can't help you with the first one. I can't make you able to go look at properties. You've got to do that yourself. You've got to make yourself available and able to go look. Uh, the rest of them I can help you with.
Now, I always keep that in mind because sometimes you want to take on a project for which you don't have the time or for which you are not properly prepared or educated, for which you
Mhm.
don't have the money, and maybe you're not ready to be a buyer. It doesn't mean you have to know without a doubt you'll be successful, but be ready to take that step.
Correct.
And first house I bought out in Grand Prairie, I had tried to get several deals, and I just finally said, "I'll take this one." So that's been a good property for me, Kathy. Just now
Good. I'm
changing tenants.
glad. I'll tell Sam.
Well, uh-huh. So, which brings me to another property. I don't know if all of you know this, but I'm an investor as well as a realtor. I started out just as an investor, and one deal went south, and I thought a totally preventable way. And I, for years, blamed the realtor for that not working out for me. And I decided on that deal, well, I'll just become a realtor because how hard can it be, right? Well, pretty doggone hard, y'all. It is not easy to be a good realtor. The learning curve is very steep. And
Thank you for saying that because no, this job is not easy.
it is not easy. The amount of knowledge that you need to have is quite astronomical. And then to hear people say realtors don't bring any value, you don't even need them. The title company does everything. Sometimes I'm annoyed, but you know what? Part of that is that there are realtors that aren't great out there. But I'm going to put that on the people that choose them. What's your criteria for choosing the professional you have represent or guide you? Choose well, and then you have a great realtor. Choose well, and you have a great insurance agent. Choose well, and you have a great tax strategist. Choose unwisely, and then you don't. And then you might think all of them are awful, but they're not, just your choices. So own the responsibilities and the professionals you choose for yourself. And I'll get off that soapbox because I could go on forever. But anyway, what is real estate investing? I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Wholesaling to me, which is buying a property at one price so you can sell it to somebody else, I don't consider it investing because once that deal is done, there's no residual income. Now, you could build a business that does that. But once you accumulate all the money from your business, what asset do you put it into? Do you put it in the stocks, insurance, annuities, or real estate? You still have to put that money somewhere or it starts depreciating the longer it sits. Flipping homes, which is buying a property at a certain price so that you can fix it up and then sell it for a profit, also to me is not investing. It has something to do with real estate. You have to understand many real estate principles. You have to have a good team around you, but it's the same thing. Once that property is sold, unless you do something else, you're not getting any more money for that particular activity. What I'm looking at doing is putting into place mechanisms that not that I can completely forget about them. I don't think there's anything completely passive about any passive or residual income. You have to maintain it, but it gives you the freedom from where you maintain it, how you maintain it, how much of your time it takes. And it can still generate when you put your focus somewhere else and then you can come right back. So for realtors who are just 100% realtors, it's a commission based business. You have to constantly lead generate and convert your leads and then get them successfully approved or get their property ready to sell, complete that transaction before you get paid. Not every transaction you start closes. So you have to start enough so that your number of closings fund maybe your necessities and your lifestyle. Great profession. I love being a realtor. I'm glad for the training and the experience and the guidance, but it's not investing to me. Investing is when you buy a house and you put a tenant in it, and that tenant brings in revenue. And then there are expenses that offset that revenue. And then you pay your taxes on whatever your net income is, or if you structure it right, you don't. And then you enjoy the fruits of that fairly constant income. That's investing. If that's something y'all want to do, I would love for you to ask questions of me right now or of Kathy Crow, who's on right now. Thank you so much for joining, because I believe in it. I love it. I like taking a piece of crap house and making it pretty, or making it an investment vehicle, making it something decent. I'm not creating Taj Mahal. I won't win awards for my renovations. They are functional, they make money, they fulfill my function and my goal. So think about that. Put into place an asset that generates money for you month after month after month, whether you go to work, maybe whether you're in the country. Who wouldn't mind putting to place, say, 5 or 6 assets that each generate maybe $100? So you have an extra $500 or $600 a month, pretty much guaranteed. Is there anyone here that would say, no, thank you, I don't want that? Or is that pretty cool? Or maybe you would like, I don't know, 10 to 20 of those assets. That's what I'm talking about when I think about real estate. I'm not saying stocks aren't good. I just don't understand them. But I feel like I understand real estate. And one of the things I want to say is that I understand real estate because very knowledgeable people took their time to help me learn, Kathy Crow being one, to answer my questions, to guide me, to put into place those investment vehicles that I could cut my teeth upon and learn. So who else is ready to do that? I hope I'm hearing from some of you after tonight. But real estate investing is, to me,
I want to thank you for saying that, and I want to add the type of person Julie is. Here we were locked down for COVID, and we were already into it. What, 2, 3 months? And nobody's going out, nobody's talking to anybody but on Facebook, and everybody tried to do a few Zoom things, but it just wasn't working out. But nobody called one another, and I guess I was guilty too. And one afternoon my phone rings and it was Julie. And what did she do? Kathy, hi, how are you? How are you doing through all this? My heart broke and I just filled with tears because somebody thought about me to find out how I was, and that was Julie. And I'll help her in any way, and I'll never forget that because of all the thousands of people that I have helped through the years and walked and talked and done and gone with and everything else. Julie was the only one that picked up the phone to find out how I was, and I'll never forget it, Julie.
well, Kathy, you were just that pivotal force. And thank you for being that. And I love talking to you. I always learn something every time I'm talking to you, even if it's just something funny. So we've shared some laughs and you've been encouraging. But
Yeah,
yes, you're pretty awesome. You've been
yeah,
a
I like.
blessing in my life, and I know in many other people's lives.
Thank you. That makes me feel so good, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. I'm so glad that Kathy is here. By the way, Kathy, what platforms do you speak on? Are you still on Clubhouse?
Not really.
Not really.
Clubhouse has just turned into a zoo. I do Twitter Spaces.
Okay. All
I
right.
do like
So
Twitter Spaces. Now that
follow.
Elon bought Twitter and it's not so controversial anymore, it's not so the way it was. So I'm big on Twitter now.
Okay. Then follow Kathy Crow on Twitter. By the way, I would love it if you guys would go to my Pitranomics YouTube page and subscribe, because I'm trying to grow subscribers. And I have a Pitranomics Facebook page. Maybe you join that group. And also, like Kathy, I believe that DFW, oh my gosh, has just become not only saturated with air quote investors, but the prices have just become really, really crazy. So I am loving investing in rural Texas. Those of you, by the way, I don't know, I had a friend up to visit, couple came up, and we talked about real estate in Paris, Texas yesterday. And that was such great fun to talk and share the opportunities that was here. So opportunities that were here, use correct grammar. Um, and I realized sharing with these people yesterday how much I've learned as a result of coming up here and trying something I had never done. So, again, thank you, Kathy.
You're very welcome.
Like and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you. Thank you, Shamir. So, does anyone else have anything they'd like to ask or provide testimony about or anything? Because I've definitely gone over my time. No one? Well, tell you what, I love talking about real estate. I think in about 2 weeks, we're going to have another Wednesday Investor Corner, and I'm going to share the knowledge of a friend of mine named Bill Kunowski. He's an awesome title and escrow agent. He has saved my butt in many ways. He's just the best partner, and he's the perfect example of choosing the right people to help you grow your business. And I think that's going to be in about maybe 2 weeks or a week. Can't remember. Maybe Shamir, you can tell me. So look for that. And thank you for the encouragement from everybody to come to my Pitranomics Thursday talks. Thank you for those that offer your comments and your encouragement. I look forward to doing these every Thursday at 6 p.m. We'll cover a new strategy, and we iteratively cover those strategies. So once we go through a cycle, we'll recap and go through it again. Occasionally, I have guest speakers to help emphasize or clarify. A couple of weeks ago, I had a investor corner about insurance, and one of the people who was on there, she was here. I don't know if she's still on. It was Michelle Hambrick. Very knowledgeable about insurance. If you're going to invest in real estate, you need a good insurance agent. And Michelle is one. I'll post her in comments later. Unless, of course, she's here. You can post it, please. And that's about it. As far as investing, first accumulate and then send it out there to work and have money coming back in. Put it to work to accomplish your goals. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you come next week. And I appreciate you guys so much. So, mwah. Thank you for coming. We're ending the broadcast.